Welcome to Friends of the Table, an actual play podcast focused on critical world building, smart characterization, and fun interaction between good friends. I am Austin Walker, and today I'm going to introduce you to a new game. I'm going to do it with my good friend, Jack de Quidt.
Hello, Austin. I'm Jack.
Hi, Jack. I am if it's the first time you're hearing my voice ever, welcome to Friends of the Table, and welcome to Realis, a game that I've been making on and off for about 4 years. This episode is sort of a short introduction to what Realis is. This is not scripted, and so if we stumble over anything, please accept our apology for that. Jack was a kind of early co-designer on the project, and a huge help in figuring out things all throughout the project. Even Jack, after you and I were done kind of working on it day in, day out during the first kind of feverish week or two, I would come to you every few weeks or months to be like, hey, how do tokens work? Can we figure this out? Let's talk really through seven ways to understand tokens, you know?
When we tell you how tokens work, you're going to go, oh, this seems very straightforward. Let me tell you. That was deliberate.
It was not always. Yeah. Well, at one point there was a deeper, stranger token exchange economy. It's a whole thing. What is Realis, Jack? Do you have I've just handed you the hardest task. I'm sorry I did that. In one sentence, what is Realis?
The ranged touch one sentence summary.
That's right.
Realis is a tabletop game played without dice that uses a series of initially simple and gradually more complex sentences to create and solve kind of like tests that you would see in another RPG.
That's a great summary. I have two summaries that I introduced this game with on the first few pages of the game. I said that Realis is both a place, a cursed orbital sphere of 1,000 mystical moons, and a game, one of collaborative storytelling in a world of mystery, magic, and impossible technology. As a place, Realis is a setting for moon-hopping adventure, arcane discovery, fatal conflict, and meditations on the ever-changing nature of the self, society, and history. And as a game, it's a set of rules that shapes conversations into an engine for collaborative storytelling. Generally speaking, you'll have more than one player, unlike me today with Jack, and that group of people will play and tell the story of a band of protagonists, player characters, who use powerful sentences, capital S sentences, as they explore, love, fight, worship, and unfold their stories across the 1,000 moons. The sentence is sort of the core unit of Realis. We often talk about the word means. Also, you'll hear me say, what means are you using in this conflict? There's lots of capital letter words like sentence and conflict and means, which are capitalized throughout the book for clarity. And I should say, by the way, the book right now is a PDF. You can find it on itch.io. It's on my personal itch.io page, the calcutech.itch.io, THECALCUTEC.itch.io. There will be links to it in the description for this. It is being published by Possible Worlds Games by Tyler Crumrine. We hope to release the entire thing and not just this Ashcan release that's available now. Through in the next year or so. It's been so good working with Tyler, who has done the layout, who has been an editor, who has put together so much of what the kind of presentation of the game looks like. I also want to credit Grime, who did the cover art, and Sam Beck, who did a lot of the interior art that originally was used for postcards. At Friends of the Table, we do a Patreon a bonus level that lets you get postcards with microfiction. We did a series of those in Realis last year before the game was out, before the campaign was being released, because that's how things work sometimes. So shout outs to all of them. Please go check out the rest of Tyler's games. Tyler has been an incredible help with this process, and I will tell you, I'm only the first of a number of really great collaborations and projects that Possible Worlds is going to be putting out over the next little bit, so stay tuned for more on that front. Back to the game. Now that I said the word book, I think, or words, and I was like, oh, right, I should shout out the book, and who helped put the book together. The sentence is the sort of engine of Realis. Player characters have a class, which is the sort of thing that you know from role-playing games, and there's a mix of ones that are very familiar to you, probably, like the Berserker, and then also things like the Xenagogue. So kind of a wide range of classes. The Ashcan that's available now has 20 classes in it. That is not half of the classes that are already written for this game. I suspect the final number in the final version will be around 50. We are very close to that already, and the ones that we're writing now are so complex and weird, they're probably not going to make the main book, but maybe a future supplement. So we'll see how that goes. There are also in the Ashcan 40 NPC types, NPC classes, and 2 or 3 factions, which kind of have their own lore and their own kind of sentences and abilities and stuff. And again, that's not even half of the number of both of those. There are way more factions than 3, and there are, again, probably 40 is not even double what the NPC list is currently, the NPC type list, the NPC class list right now. So a lot there. All of those things use sentences in order to solve conflicts, in order to overcome the odds. And so, let's just say the very first full class sentence in the book is the Berserker's "I always kill my foe." Jack, you played a Berserker in the very first playtest of this game, actually. Do you remember this?
Oh, wow, I did. Yes, we were in a circus.
That's right, we were in a circus. We were in, I have it written here, the Medallion Cavalcade. You played King Lud the Berserker.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And do you remember what happened in that game?
We fought a knight that was made of iron.
Yeah.
In the middle of a circus ring.
You did, and I made a big showing, and I said the sentence. I'm going to double check here, but I believe I said, do you have any sort of sentence that can counter? And I said a sentence from the knight in question. I think it was, "I am always invincible." The knight had the sentence, "I am always invincible." It was the Pharaonic, the special type of knight, one of the 5 infamous knights naturalis of the Leo Suzerainty. And I said, the Pharaonic is going to try to attack you. They're attacking you in the middle of this ring. Their goal, their impulse is to, make you embarrassed or something. And you said, "Yes, I can counter that. I always kill my foe." And that's really the heart of how this game works. When things come into conflict, or when there is any uncertainty, the GM, and this is a GM'd game, there will eventually be optional rules potentially for GM-less play. I think it loans itself to it pretty well, but by default it's a GM'd game. The GM will say, "Hey, I think that sounds kind of uncertain," or "Someone is trying to stop you from doing the thing that you're doing," or "Someone is trying to exert pressure on you or to take an action near you. Do you want to try to counter that action?" For instance, this guy's trying to stab you. This guy's trying to embarrass you. Someone's trying to break down the door. Someone's trying to discredit you in public. Whatever it is, right? Or someone's trying to cause a riot or cause chaos, or someone's trying to spread a disease. What do you do to stop it? Or you say, "I want to do this thing." And when that happens, if it's uncertain or if someone else might try to stop you, we go into conflict. And at that point, 2 sentences come into comparison. Sentences in this game have levels, so by default they all start at +0. "I always kill my foe" is a +0 sentence. "I am always invincible" is a +0 sentence. The sentence of the person trying to counter always wins on a tie. So in the case that you were defending, so to speak, you were countering "I am always invincible," boom, you did it. You succeeded because you were the counter, you were not the actor. The Realis always prizes passivity. Is one of the core rules you'll hear us talk about long term in the game. It's at the top of the book. If you have the book in front of you, you can see that it's very early on there. I actually don't have the final layout, but in the playtest document, it's like one of the first things you read. After a sentence fails, assuming you've lived, which most of the sentences don't automatically kill you, the Berserker is just like that. Assuming you live long enough for a sentence to fail 3 times, whether you're the actor or the counter actor, you've marked it 3 times. Every time it fails, you mark it. When you've marked it 3 times, it is primed for realization. Jack, if you wanted to realize the sentence "I always kill my foe," how might you realize it?
You can realize sentences in a bunch of different ways, but you are going to add a condition to it as it gets realized. So you could, for example, say, "I always kill my foe in the rain."
Right.
Or "I always kill my foe at night."
Right.
Or I always kill my foe if they are of the Leo suzerainty.
Exactly. And so suddenly these things that are very powerful and broad, but are only +0 sentences, which means they lose if used against a +1 sentence or a +2 or a +3 sentence. They get more specific. I think of Realis as, in fact, I'll say it this way, because I was just talking to Chase Carter of Rascal about this, and I was explaining that lots of games have progression mechanics that are additive. If you have a new character in a traditional tabletop role-playing game, basically of any make or model, you're adding things to them. They pick up new spells, they get new skills, their attribute points go up, and this is everything from Powered by the Apocalypse and Forged in the Dark games to D&D and old White Wolf games, and most games I've ever played work this way. There is something about Realis that is a little bit more subtractive in the sense of sculpture, right? Where you have a big block, a big marble stone, and you're chipping away at it, but that doesn't ruin it. It makes it more clear what is inside of the stone. And so by the end of a game, the Berserker is no longer, I always kill my foe. It might be, when I fight my foe in the rain, or when I fight an Imperial Empest foe in the rain, I always wound my foe, or something like that. Very specific. And in fact, by the very end of the game, sentences retire. They can only go up to +3. When they prime at +3, they become, instead of going to +4, they go back to +0. And it becomes, I used to always kill my foe. I once always killed my foes. And that is the arc of a character in Realis, and that is the very simple version. There's a bunch of other stuff here. There are tokens that can add a temporary +1 to a sentence. There's the notion of honing a sentence, where you can temporarily realize it. You give it a new condition just for the rest of the session. There are bonds, which are not currently written with always statements. They're kind of more traditional tabletop-y character bonds, but they can still realize and change over time. Though I will say, if you're playing, one of the things I'm curious about from campaigns is how bonds work. That's one of the things I'm hoping to get playtest data on as more people play it. There are banned sentences. Your group has a sentence that's a +1 sentence at the beginning of the game, that is straight up, when we work together we always blank, and there's also a thing called ephemera, which are temporary use items. If you have the Master Sword of Zelda fame, the Master
Sword.
Sword,
in this game?
Yeah, that's in this game. The Master Sword always banishes evil. Right? And unlike the rest of sentences, ephemera do not need to be qualified to be powerful. The Master Sword is a +3 sword, or +3 ephemera out the gate. Now, it can only be used 3 times before it loses the sort of narrative oomph that gives it, that lets it be used as a sentence. After that, it goes just
like
nothing.
in Zelda.
Just like in Zelda. I mean, eventually it's oh yeah, you have the Master Sword, cool. The game is balanced for you having the Master Sword. Obviously it's still useful, but you're past that point where it's a big deal that Link has the Master Sword. You need to have the Master Sword to do the stuff, and so that's kind of the way ephemera work. I think that's pretty much everything on. And there's also a thing called an impulse, which is both moons have impulses and characters have impulses. Characters follow their impulses or the impulse of the moon in order to recover their token after they've spent it. And so I think that's kind of the gist. Is there anything else you want to add about what the game is or what it does? You've now played a bunch of it with me, Jack. I'm curious if there's anything else in terms of setup before we show off a little bit of how it works.
I think it's quite a simple game. At the heart of it, it has a very straightforward sort of. I always kill my foe is very readable.
Yeah.
And starts summoning certain ideas for players, and the starter classes all have really straightforward ways. So I think this game is pretty friendly to jump into, and at the same time, the place where it lives, the place where it really starts to sing, is in the ways that these individual classes sort of bounce off each other.
Right.
It's also worth saying that, and you sort of gestured at this before, NPCs in this game also have sentences too.
Right.
This is essential to the way that it works. And if you've heard some friends at the table in the past where Austin's piloting NPCs in conflict that aren't always operating by quite the same rules as the player. Realis is much closer to something where enemies and NPCs have very similar rules, not quite exactly the same, but they are deploying sentences against you or defending with their own sentences, etc.
Yep, that's exactly right. So I'm looking at the list of NPCs that are here. The underling has the 3+0 sentences. I always do as I'm told. I always talk a big game, and I always retreat to my boss. And they can use those to get things in the same way that player characters can.
It's a toady.
It's a toady, exactly, yes. Though I haven't written toady here just in case I want to make some sort of toad person alien NPC later. And they're not...
Check here. We also have Undying Saint. Yeah. We don't need to read those ones.
No, we don't need to read those. We have prey birds. We have fizzilists. We have minotaurs and judges and heresiarchs and heliomancers, which, you would think the heliomancer does sun magic, and that's true. To a point. It's just the sun is a little different in Realis. So, and I'm not going to go through all of what the situation of Realis is, but let me briefly finish that paragraph I started that was as a place. And then from there, maybe we'll zoom into play. Does that sound good, Jack?
Yeah, that works.
As a place, Realis is a setting for moon-hopping adventure, arcane discovery, fatal conflict, and meditations on the ever-changing nature of the self, society, and history. It is an uncanny solar system where 1,000 satellites orbit a massive incandescent planet, the titular Realis, from which only the saint-like radiant have ever returned. Above it all, the corpse sun roils and emits its final dregs of light, while the great void churns below, eager to swallow anything that errs too near. Some of the 1,000 moons are claimed by dozens of ever-squabbling petty baronies of the Leo Suzerainty. Others have been conquered by the lacustal fleets of the Imperial Empest, or have been forcibly converted by the hypocritical and violent theocrats of the Venerant Sea. More obscure factions, like the secretive scholars of the Zvezd Lyceum or the esoterics of the Renostica, keep to the shadows. A danger, since the shadows are home to ill worms, ghastly sovereigns, and the drift, a realm of raw emotion and unhinged desire. And everywhere, moonfolk find a way forward, claiming small joys and working towards some sort of tomorrow. You are one of these moonfolk working towards some sort of tomorrow. Jack, can you read me your character's name and pronouns? And then read what I filled in here for the look, and I'll have to send you an image because
this
I
is
need
so
you to
exciting.
know what this means. Yeah.
Austin we talked about what character we wanted to show off in the demo, and I opened up the book this morning to refamiliarize myself with the sentences, little knowing that just before we recorded, Austin would hand me a character sheet in progress. It's great. This is like the bit at the very beginning of the video game where you have a bunch of the weird powers and also you're being pursued or something.
Well,
I am playing Amaretto Scandal. That's Scandal, Scandle.
Yeah, candle with an S in front of it. Yeah.
Yeah, pronouns they, them. And look here, you've just written Noko's outfit on the cover of Rebecca's Raspberry Dream single.
Rebecca is a 80s J-rock band. This is the outfit in question.
Oh, wow. I feel like this outfit has appeared on Friends at the Table before.
I have wanted it to appear for sure before, and I don't know if it has. I'm double checking because it may have. But if it didn't, it had to. I think I've sent it to you to be like, we have to put this in something. So
yeah, so this is a Japanese woman with frizzy black hair. She is wearing big 80s hair. She is wearing what looks like a baggy, like brocaded blazer in like bright. It's in dark purple with bright purple flowers on it. Underneath, she is wearing what looks like an iridescent blue shirt. That might actually just be the folded back collar of the blazer.
I think that's right.
Underneath that, she has like a half-popped collar of... How would I describe this? It's like it's a collared shirt, and it is bright yellow and green and sort of striped, almost like you're seeing a portion of a Hawaiian shirt. Mm-hmm. She is wearing like a pin, almost like a like a bolo tie pin that is connected with chains to a medallion on her shoulder, and she is wearing what look like 2 military medals if the only materials that the army had to use were the contents of their great-grandmother's jewelry box.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah. So I think that this is what you're wearing here, Amaretto. I have this picture very clearly, and it's not you don't necessarily look like Noko, but this is the outfit. This is the stage of runner that you are. Sorry for taking the spotlight for a second and saying what class you are. What is the runner? Do you recall what runners are?
The runner is your scoundrel. They're not exactly the scoundrel. They are your like Han Solo type. They are smuggling. They are running blockades. If you need to find some maybe like an illicit substance or a strange animal, or you need to get safe passage through like a terrain that is being watched over by the soldiers or the police, you might go to the runner.
Do you want to read your class sentences?
Yeah, I have 4 class sentences. Realis characters always start with at least 3 sentences.
I think NPCs start with 3 generally. Player characters always start with 4. The 4th tends to be something that could get you into trouble so that you could more easily do a couple of special actions. One is called Tragic Success, which is where one of your sentences deliberately leads you deeper into trouble, which lets you recharge your token. The other is called Illuminating Failure, where once per session you can purposefully fail as a way to mark a sentence and advance it, start to advance it. And so was a good idea to have a sort of sentence that leans in that direction. You will know which one that is when Jack reads it, I think.
Okay, so my first sentence is reality 1. That is to say, it has been realized once. This is a sentence that has had something bolted onto it one time. That sentence is, when I'm somewhere I've been before, I always have an alibi. And you can kind of hear the way that sentence has been realized. The original runner sentence, I always have an alibi, has been realized to a reality 1 sentence with when I'm somewhere I've been before. This has 2 marks next to it, indicating that it has failed twice.
That's right.
And with a 3rd mark, I can get ready to realize it, put it up in reality and add a thing to it. I have another reality 1 sentence. I always keep my cargo concealed from technological devices. This has 1 checkmark by it.
Again,
then I have a reality...
It used to just be, I always keep my cargo concealed. Obviously, what this means is, if someone comes to look for your cargo and looks for it with their eyes and not a technological device, you cannot use the sentence against them.
No.
But
if they're using their cargo finder, which is like a horrid little squiddling bug that beeps around.
Yes, exactly.
Then the bug will not find it.
Or the scanners on their ship or whatever, or their space station. Yeah.
Or their watch that gives them Nen through technology.
That's right, exactly.
Now I have a reality 2 sentence. This is one that has been bolted onto twice. When my back is against the wall, I always unveil a single-use concealed weapon. You might hear a sentence like that and you might think, wow, that's pretty conditional, huh? Yep,
sure
that's
is.
how Realis goes.
Yep. You're not going to be using this thing to assassinate somebody. Your back is not against the wall. Now, will a certain type of player say, well, what if I put my back literally against a wall? And to that I say, if you're GMing, that's up to you. A thing we have not gone over here is foundational sentences or foundation sentences. Realis doesn't have the sort of it doesn't work with like lines and veils. It works with a thing called foundation sentences as the safety tools. Jack, when we played, we had a set of foundation sentences that I kind of brought over here. They're not in this document, but I'll read them again. Our story never depicts sexual assault or sexual violence. Our story always shows you where the sword goes, but never shows what it does. And our story always errs on the side of maximalism. And those 3 foundation sentences are encouragement to play in certain ways, clarity on what topics we shouldn't hit, and often the former, the sort of encouragement of how things play, means that you'll end up being able to refer to those as guidance for how loosely or how tightly you want to read certain terms. I think in the right situation, I would accept lots of reads on when my back is against the wall. There are definitely times when the ambiguity in language in Realis produces a really fun, interesting effect, you know? And so up to the players, up to the table, up to the GM to kind of work together to decide, hey, are you being, you know, or is that not to the spirit of what the sentence is? Or have you found a really fun, you know, kind of loophole through language? Always fun to kind of negotiate that. So that's your third sentence.
And then I have my fourth sentence. This is Reality 3. When fleeing from the authorities, I always pilot the Black Thistle, my orphan vessel, towards great danger. Orphan vessels in Realis, we'll probably see one in a bit, are sort of miraculous living spaceships.
That's right.
And you can hear that Amaretto's sentence here is now very specific. The original sentence was, I always pilot my orphan vessel towards trouble.
Yeah.
And you can now hear, when fleeing from the authorities, I always pilot the Black Thistle, my orphan vessel, towards great danger.
Yeah. It was originally just towards trouble. Now it is you have to be fleeing. It's not just danger, but it's great danger. And that is reality level 3, and it's 2 out of 3 marks. So it's almost primed. And again, when a reality, when a +3 sentence gets up to priming, when it's ready to be realized, it instead gets retired. So it becomes a past tense sentence. This will become, I always used to pilot the Black Thistle, my orphan vessel, towards great danger. And you can continue using it as a +0 sentence, but you can't, but it doesn't do the thing it used to do. It's like saying, I used to be the high school quarterback. I used to be the star quarterback. There's stuff from that you might be able to pull on still, but only at a +0. You know, you're not the +3 star quarterback anymore. Another important thing worth noting is in that sentence, there are a pair of florons, these kind of leaf-like icons to the left and the right of the word orphan vessel, that those are special sentences called hallmark. They're called hallmark sentences, or those are called hallmarks inside of a sentence. Some classes, not all of them, but some of them have something special, a piece of equipment, a special spell, some sort of belief. You know, they're not in the set of classes here, but the Juggernaut has something like, I always stand for a creed, or I always like defend my creed. The creed is the hallmark in that sentence. And those are things that you have to define during character creation. You have to say, oh, this is, you know, if you are the Berserker, for instance, your unstoppable weapon is the hallmark in that sentence. And so you have to define what that thing is. You know, Guts from Berserk has the great sword, right? It's not that Guts from Berserk has a sort of like always produces a weapon when he needs it. Now, maybe he also gets some ephemera later, like the cool handgun thing or the crossbow or other types of weapons, but his core weapon is his core weapon. It's that one thing. But importantly, when my back is against the wall, single-use concealed weapon sentence is not a hallmark sentence, right? You can use that, and it could be a new thing each time. In fact, it doesn't even say, I always carry one on my body. Your orphan vessel might have a concealed weapon, you know?
The word here is unveil.
Exactly, 100%. This is something I think very important too. You know, the duelist has a beautiful and distinct weapon, but I was really careful to go back into the description and be like, by blade, bullet, boomerang, or otherwise. Like, a duelist is not just someone with a fencing sword, you know? There's lots of range for what a duelist can have in these sorts of stories. You know, I guess by this point it's kind of obvious there's kind of a pulpy science fantasy vibe for Realis, and that means that there's a lot of breadth in where and how you tell your story. I've run this game where it's on one moon that is a sort of, slightly fantastical medieval moon. I've run planet hopping adventures or moon hopping adventures that are kind of swashbuckly. I've heard people who have run kind of dungeon delves, almost OSR style dungeon delves. I have seen people do like grand space opera that's kind of zoomed out in terms of the perspective.
Wow, that's a fun one.
Yeah,
I'd
totally.
have to play Stellaris in Realis.
You could totally do it, right? I mean, like, you'd have to pick the right classes, and you'd have to think about, you know, I think I was just telling Chase this also, that Legacy Life Among the Ruins is another influence here, where like it's a game that you could zoom out and play with, especially if you started doing some like alternative rules around the way factions work, which we'll get into as we continue. You have a few other things on here. You have your token right now, and you have an impulse. Your impulse is tied to what your sphere is. There are 9 spheres in this game. Spheres are sort of collections of classes, and you are from the sphere of shadow. What is your impulse?
My impulse is respond to a noble problem with dishonorable means. And this is sort of like a guide for a player on some level, as much or as little as the player wants to use it. But also, I can recharge my token. And again, we'll talk more about how tokens work, but I'm going to spend it at some point and we'll need to get it back.
Yep.
One of the ways that I can get it back is by acting on an impulse. So I can say, if I can make a clear argument for the way in which I am responding to a noble problem with dishonorable means, that's a way to get my token back.
Exactly. And you can also get your token back when you realize a bond with another player, and again, tragic success, when one of your sentences deliberately leads you into trouble. You can spend that token to, like I said before, boost the rank of your sentence that you're using, or you can use it to use what's called a moon sentence, which we'll get to in play. Moon sentences are sort of like setting sentences. They're things in the world. They reflect the moon that you are currently on, or the space station that you're currently on, etc. You can spend your token to use one of the sort of things about that world. And I don't say you, I don't just mean the player character. I mean you, Jack, could decide, the one that I talk about in the book is that there is a moon called Danile, and Danile parents always tell you about their children. If you were being chased, you could say, I'm going to spend my token to use Danile parents always tell me about my children, in order to have the person pursuing me distracted by someone who's like, hey, look, have you seen my children before? Look at these pictures of my kids, and like slow them down as you're like cutting through the bar or whatever, right, to escape them. And that's not a thing your character did. It's just a thing the world did, because Realis is sort of a game about stories and worlds, and words, and how the three of those things kind of interact. You also have some ephemera. I'd say let's go through the ephemera later, like as we play, if they come up. Though I will say one of them is crossed off. You want to read that one? And I'll explain what, again, we already talked about this with the Master Sword, so actually we don't have to go too deep into it, but the second face amulet always projects a smiling facade. That's gone. You can't use that as a sentence as a means in a conflict, but you still have the amulet. You know what I mean? It's not a +0 sentence or anything now, but it's straight up just, it doesn't move the narrative forward anymore for you to do it. But if you want to describe yourself projecting a different face, that's a thing you could still do, because it's not like it broke after 3 uses. It's not a potion that you've used up. I think that's kind of everything. Oh, you have one bond. There's not another player here right now, but you do have a bond. Normally these are player focused, but I gave you one. Do you want to read this?
Yeah, my bond is with Elio the Owl. Elio treats my vessel, the Black Thistle, right. They are the only other person I will ever let pilot it.
Shoutouts to Elio the Owl. You got a little owl friend. You got a little, I think it's a small one. I think it's one of those tiny baby ones,
How does Elio pilot the ship? Who knows? I suppose.
Yeah, well, orphan vessels are alive. Orphan vessels have personalities. Maybe it's about talking to the orphan vessel in the right way. Maybe it hops from button to button,
Or maybe it can't actually pilot it, but they are the only other person I would ever let pilot it.
That's right. Yes. All right. I think it's probably time to try to show off Realis a little bit.
Yeah.
Does that sound good?
Yeah, we have not scripted this. I thought about whether or not we should. It is ultimately more interesting if we don't.
Yeah, I did the thing that I think most prep in Realis looks like, which is sort of soft prep. There's a place, you have a goal, I know who's in the area, I know how they work, I know what their situations are. You know some of them, it's worth saying. You have, on this kind of note sheet that we've shared, know some of the sentences of the Free Moon Assembly and the Imperial Empest and Carrie Cloud, the Hawkshaw who's been pursuing you, etc. You've been to the Hippodrome, Track, and Casino before. This is the place that you're headed towards. But you don't know all of them. You only know 2 of the Free Moon Assembly sentences. You only know 5 of the potential 10 Hippodrome, Track, and casino sentences. And I believe the GM can start with a total of 6 prepped for any given moon. And again, you can spend a token. You can create your own moon sentences, importantly. That's the third thing the tokens can do. We didn't say that. Tokens can also make new moon sentences. Players can author new parts of the world using the token, which is very useful, I think, personally. So you are, like we said, a runner. You are Amaretto Scandal, and you are distinct from most people who live on the 1,000 Moons of Realis. Most people will never leave their homeworld. A small percentage will, maybe a few times in their life, get on a shuttle, these little hoppers that can move from one moon to a neighboring moon, or one that is passing very close by. But most people can't go all across the 1,000 moons that orbit Realis itself. But you do have an orphan vessel, one of the living spaceships that's capable of making its way through the orbital currents of Realis, and you have used it to great effect. As a runner, you have spent decades now bopping from place to place, breaking through blockades, bringing cargo and contraband and passengers to their destinations, working on every side of the law and every side of everyone's law, trying to win favors and cash them in. You have been at the center of great collaborations and terrible betrayals. And you've made a bit of a name for yourself as a pretty effective runner. Now, a thing I told you when I was pitching you this character is you're sort of like, what if Han Solo wanted to become Gandalf? You have a dream. We haven't mentioned dreams, but dreams are a special sort of sentence. Every player character starts with a dream, which is a sentence that you can use one time, and when you do, you win the conflict. What is your dream?
My dream is I will learn enough to fix what I broke.
Which I think is a fun, ambiguous one. We don't have to go too much deeper into that, but a lot of the dreams have some sort of ambiguity to them, or reference some part of the world that isn't super well defined, and it's up to the players and the GM to make those definitions. You will not find a lot of hard answers in the Book of Realis. You know, the factions have descriptions and goals and stuff, but in terms of a lot of the world building, you know, I do not tell you what is on Realis itself. I told you that only the Radiant have been able to come back from there and tell anybody. I haven't told you what the Radiant have said, or sometimes I'll hint what a Radiant might have said, and it'll come into conflict with what somebody else has said. You are the authors of your own story, and you should take that authority and run with it. So I'm not necessarily sure what you broke at this point, but I do know you want to learn enough to fix it, and particularly you're trying to learn some magic. You have heard that there is a cache of knowledge, an archive of the word rights at the center of the Hippodrome racetrack and casino, a space station that floats in the Free Moon Assembly space. The Free Moon Assembly is one of the factions of the game. They're not actually even in the Ashcan, so we're not going to go too deep into them here, but they'll show up in the course of the Realis season that you hear in the main feed over the next month, and then in the Patreon feed when it shifts over to that, and we start up our Fabula Ultima game in the main feed. So they'll show up. You'll learn more about them in there. But you know, it's kind of what it sounds like. Free Moons Assembly, a bunch of moons. They've decided to link up and work together. They kind of hang on loosely, which is why, for instance, there's a big space casino that's part of them. You have heard that there is a word right archive in the middle of this casino somewhere, which is not a place for it, but the word rights are weird. They are maybe more than magicians. They are people who supposedly are, kind of true alchemists of the world. They can really make anything into anything else, and not using little vials and implements, but using the power of language itself. And you're pretty sure if you get your hands on some of their knowledge, you could do whatever you wanted. You don't have a map to the place, but you do have some tools at your disposal, and fundamentally, you're a runner. You know how to get into places and out of places, and so you're pretty confident that you can complete this mission. And I think as we come in, you are approaching the casino, from a distance. You know, there's other moons all around you. You can see them. Some of them are large in this kind of, classic sci-fi novel cover art way. Some of them look like stars. They're so far away, but they're all orbiting the giant blue incandescent world of Realis itself. And yeah, I think that you're in the kind of cockpit of your orphan vessel. You are looking at this casino, which I think I'm imagining it as being like a wooden top, like a thin wooden top, and then around that are lights floating in space, where the racetrack is. And around that racetrack, there are currently a bunch of what are called longfish, sort of giant space eels that are being raced in a big race around this track. You'll see the first sentence here of the hippodrome is, "Hippodrome jockeys always ride their longfish in serpentine curves," big winding curves not just as they go around turns in the race, but even as they're on straightaways, there are these like big whipping back and forth, like a snake in the sand, like an eel in the water. They are almost like charioteers. They're like attached to these longfish in a little capsule, and directing them with these big mechanical reins. And unfortunately, the way into the casino is past this racetrack, and when the races are going on, you have to wait to get in. And I think that's where we're going to come in. You're watching this race go on. It's a 100-lap race. We're at lap 22. You've been waiting for a while already. Tell me what's going on with you, Amaretto.
I think heels up on the command console of the orphan vessel. Drinking something out of like a thermos flask.
Mm-hmm.
You always got to be ready to go, and you don't necessarily have enough time to drink a full cup of coffee. So you have the drink in the thermos flask, make it into the thermos flask so that you can take it with you, on the way as you leave. I'm watching Elio, who is watching the lungfish, good owl eyes. Lungfish?
Longfish, yeah. Maybe they have lungs. I don't know. They're in space, so there ain't much to breathe out here.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I mean, it's lap 22 out of 100, and as enjoyable as the race is to watch, I would like to try and make it in beforehand, but I also don't want to cause too much of a show.
Sure.
So I think I would like to identify if there are any like VIP vessels also waiting.
Oh, that's really
for access to the thing.
That's a great question, and this is for me one of the great things about Realis. I'm not sure, and so I get to ask you. I say that seems uncertain to me. Do you have a means by which you could solve that problem? And a means is a class sentence, an ephemera, a moon sentence if you're spending a token, a bond or a band sentence, or your dream. It's anything that you could use. It's any of these groups of sentences that you could use to overcome uncertainty. I don't think that this is being particularly contested at this point, because you're just trying to see, right? You're not trying to do the thing yet. Well, we can take this in parts. So step one is you're looking for an opportunity, right?
Yes.
So what do you got that could help you make sense of this?
I have an ephemera called the Wooden Compass. The Wooden Compass always shows me the way to safety.
And I know what you're thinking. It's a wooden compass that you hold in your hand and it points to magnetic north, except for magnetic north is safety. It's not. It's a sort of compass that you draw lines with. And it's but instead of holding a pencil, it has just like a sort of illuminated, kind of a slender stick with an illuminated tip. This is not being contested. I think this is going to succeed. It literally lifts into the air and draws a sort of laser line in the air. So that's a circle around a part of the exterior of the racetrack where you see a bunch of other yachts that are like space yachts, like orphan vessels that are dressed up like yachts, basically, that are parked on the outside. And, you know, there are people in their yachts watching the race, but there's also, it's the one place that has a sort of bridge that goes up and or doesn't go over, but it actually goes like, it connects to the inner casino, and the racers have to avoid the bridge. They go above and below it as they're taking their turns around. And obviously you could just try to avoid them altogether and go, but there, you can't go anywhere near the racetrack officially when the race is going on, even though space, you would think you just kind of dock at the bottom. No, you wait until the race is done. It's too dangerous to do it otherwise, except for this one place. They let you moor your fancy orphan vessels if you were a fancy person with VIP access, and then go through this space bridge into the casino. So yeah, there is a place. Now, I don't know that you have access to that place necessarily, but maybe you do. Oh, importantly, mark your ephemera.
Oh,
because
yes,
unlike,
I have used it.
Exactly. Unlike regular class sentences that only get marked when they fail, ephemera get used whenever you use them, succeed or fail. And when you've marked it the third time, that is it. It no longer can be used as a means.
All right. Cool. Yeah, I'm going to, start piloting the orphan vessel down towards this place and looking for a docking point somewhere to put the orphan vessel, moor the orphan vessel. And as she comes into dock, I am going to, stand up and what do I find? Some sort of like a hat or something. I want to have this image of Amaretto readying themselves to go out and mingle with the...
Do you even find a hat, or do you just use the second face amulet to generate yourself a new hat on the top of your head?
That's a really good idea. Right, yes. Because I can still use it.
Yeah, it's just not a means
It just
anymore.
won't be... if, for example, someone comes to... if that would be tested in the narrative,
exactly.
then it wouldn't be.
So wait a second, that's not a real hat. If you ran up against the hat judge, they'd be like, you're disqualified.
The hat judge will be shipping in the main edition of Realis.
That's right, yeah. The judge, the NPC class, already in the ashcan.
Oh, yeah. I think that the second face amulet, a hat with a big feather on my head, and then I sort of snarl or sneer at the mirror and see that, one of my teeth is chipped or something, and then the second face amulet gives me the beautiful veneers, the glimmering smile.
I think at that moment, Elio the owl lands on your shoulder and does a little hoot at you, whoo, as if to ask you, should I come with you or should I stay here?
Absolutely come with me. Come on, what are you talking about?
All right, and kind of hovers behind you for a second, and then when the Black Thistle, your vessel, opens the kind of side door here to this area that is being, you've docked it with an exterior. You're walking onto a walkway in space that is being aerated so you can breathe here. And you see other people who are not wearing any sort of, any sort of oxygen tank or anything similar like that. So you know that this is safe. I will say, you do see security around and hosts and stuff that clearly have the hookups ready to go for short-term breathing solutions, but most of the guests aren't bothering, they don't want any sort, they want to look their best, and that's that, I do, even before you get there though, I do need to know if you can counter a sentence. Carrie Cloud the Hawkshaw, who is pursuing you because of things you've stolen from her
My
bosses.
Crimes.
Huh? Excuse me?
My crimes.
Your crimes, yeah, against the Kiliad Consortium, a sort of bureaucratic space. They're not really an empire. They are a kind of combination of major businesses and nation states that deeply believe, the way that Keith and I always talk about this is they're the sorts of people who believe that if two countries both have McDonald's, they can't go to war, because it would be bad for the McDonald's, if we just get McDonald's everywhere, then that will create world peace. That'll create peace across the Thousand Moons. You've robbed them a number of times, and Carrie Cloud has been on your back for a while, and she's using the sentence, I always sniff out enemies who've hurt the consortium. And I think you get there's a little ping of a sensor sweep from the Black Thistle, you know. It's not even a ping, actually. It's like a more like a whale sound. Like, what if a whale did a ping, you know, or a dolphin made it?
They famously do.
They do make those sorts of sounds, yeah. And it's one that you know means, like, incoming scan.
Huh. Okay, sure. I have a sentence that I could try and counter it with,
You do.
which is, Reality 1, I always keep my cargo concealed from technological devices. Now, I don't know exactly if the thing that Carrie is scanning for is me, Amaretto Scandal, or if she is looking for, you know, like the bag of gems that I stole or something.
That's a great
question. I'm going to try.
Yeah, well, and I think that the answer here is that you're going to... I don't think that you can use it here because... or I guess you could, but it's going to fail, but before the conflict even happens, right? I'm going to tell you, I don't think that that's what she's scanning for here. She's just scanning for the ship. You have the Millennium Falcon. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, she's saying it's a silver Toyota Camry. There it is. There's a silver Toyota Camry, you know, with such and such of a thing. So
yeah, then I don't think I could counter this.
Okay. Her intention, which I should have said out loud before, is simply to locate you, right? And to see if you were actually here. She's in the system trying to see if you're here, and then was going to kind of like bolt away to another moon if you weren't. But yeah, you now know that she is on your tail. You know, her intention here is not like, I'm going to kill you if I can find you, you know, necessarily. I mean, that would be her broader intention, but that was not the intention of that conflict.
Right.
You kind of have to set up conflicts one at a time in that way. You can't just jump to the end. You know, there's some language in the book around some key important things in terms of, you know, you should always say what using your means looks like. Play should always stay grounded in the fiction, which is to say that things should you have to set things up. You know, it's important to have clear stakes, and you shouldn't kind of go back and forth mechanically where it's like, I'm hitting you for 1 damage, but the damage is that I'm countering your sentence. Like, it doesn't really work quite like that. Sentences always stand. Which means that when you succeed at a thing, like, you know, you have found the place that will let you in here. I'm not going to like make you confused. You're not going to get down here and then be like, oh, this actually doesn't connect to the casino. I thought it connected. You succeeded. You found a way in. Doesn't mean you got in, but you did find a way in. I'm not going to take that away from you now. You should also always be thoughtful about how much flexibility to use when interpreting sentences. We talked about that before with back against the wall being sort of a flexible, interesting phrase. I also note that I thought there was one more of these here, but I'm not finding it. So I think in general, the important thing is like there's always some gray zone on that, and you know, be interpreted towards the best interest of whatever the type of story is you're trying to tell. All right, so you now know that Carrie Cloud is on your back. You're not going to mark that as a failure because you didn't even actually use it. You know, you actually couldn't. I guess I could say if you want to, you could still use a different class sentence to try to counter, because I've told you can't use that one.
Yeah, I don't think so.
You know, you could use when fleeing from the authorities, I always pilot the Black Thistle on my orphan vessel towards great danger. But you did just tell me you didn't want to create more chaos.
No, and that would just get me towards other great danger. Also, great danger is massive. I think a lot about the moment in Palisade where, Austin, you specifically lock onto the phrasing, like, beyond your expectations. Yeah. You will do damage beyond your expectations. Realis is a game that allows for that use of language, so I want to be very careful about letting us fly towards great danger.
Yes. As you approach, as you leave the Black Thistle, you see that there is a sort of security entrance to the kind of interior of this walkway that kind of opens up into. I'm almost imagining the great Hitman racetrack level.
I'm also imagining that.
You know, this is the thing that we have a lot of similar touchstones here. But I'm almost imagining that meets one of the Hitman levels where you'll have the sort of like, I mean, that level has a private party that's like up in a little like a second floor restaurant that's looking down at the thing. And I'm thinking of that, but putting it outside, right? And putting it outside in space, surrounded by moons and light, and dark. So it's kind of just floating on this thing, but you can't get into there, right? Because there's a sort of security station that you have to pass through first. And there is a security guard who's like already eyeing you up as you approach. It's a security guard, but I actually think this person's probably more like the host at a restaurant, but serving dual purpose as host and bouncer. And as I'm guessing you're approaching.
Yes.
Captain, I don't believe we have you on the registry.
Well, that can't be right. Check again.
And they look down at their sheet and they don't see the name of Amaretto Scandal or the Black Thistle here. And they're giving you an eye that's almost like, wait a second, aren't you that famous smuggler? But which isn't, that's not disqualifying necessarily. Rich people use smugglers,
Yeah. This is great because I get to decide what kind of a scoundrel I want to be.
100%.
I have this ephemera here, the divisible diamond always pays my way. So I could obviously just try and bribe this guy,
yeah.
But that would be my last use of that. It's also Reality 3, which means it's very powerful.
That's true.
And here we just have sort of like Security Jake, who is trying to stop me from going in.
True.
I also have, when my back is against the wall, I always unveil a single-use concealed weapon, which is also a kind of Han Solo, you know?
You could shoot your way in. That's true.
Or I could threaten my way
That's true. It's unveil. It doesn't say shoot.
No, but I don't know that my back is against the wall yet.
No. Maybe if Carrie had landed next to you, that would be the case. Because you're like, oh god, I gotta get moving. This detective is chasing me. But that's not there yet, right? You've just been pinged. You haven't been, chased down quite yet. You have some other stuff too. You got some stuff.
Yeah, let's see. I have. I'm also looking at my token, which I have one of.
Yep.
And one of the things that my token lets me do is boost the rank of a means.
Yeah.
I can use it to increase a sentence or a bond or a banned sentence if I'm in a group by 1. Or I can use a moon sentence as means.
This is
or
true.
I can create and use a new moon sentence.
Do you want to go over what the moon sentences are? You already read one of them.
Yeah. Hippodrome jockeys always ride their longfish in serpentine curves. Hippodrome gamblers always lose after they win. Hippodrome security always spots a cheater. The Hippodrome casino always tempts those in search of something. The Hippodrome restaurants always offer endless buffets. As
you can tell, sometimes a moon sentence is flavorful, and you'll have to, almost in classic PBTA, you get a 7 to 9 on trying to gather information, you'll have to figure out how to put it to your own use. You'll have to, in the Gibsonian term, you'll have to be the streets that's finding its own uses for things. The Hippodrome restaurants always offer endless buffets. Does not seem like one that is particularly actionable very easily, but, I can imagine it. There's many ways in which it could come up. You could do something very tricky here. Which is, what sentence is probably going to be used against you by security, Jake.
Yes, which is Hippodrome security always spots a cheater.
That's right. What could you do?
I could play fair.
You could play fair? There's another thing you could do with your token. You could use Hippodrome security always spots a cheater.
Oh,
and then the moon can't use it. Because you can't counter a moon sentence with the same sentence.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how you would use it. I know how I would use it, but I don't know how you would use it, so...
Could I use it to have him spot someone else who's flagrantly cheating?
Absolutely could.
Okay, so I'm going to spend my token here, in this moment, and across the other side of the... I'm picturing this, this beautiful outdoor party. There's a woman whose veil is like 41 veils pouring backwards off her hair, and the veils move outside of the whatever it is that is generating the artificial gravity, so it's like lifting off up into the distance. There's a man who's absolutely drowning in strings of diamonds, and then there is a woman who like pulls what looks like one of those tiny little purse muskets from her bag and points it at another man and says, "You dirty cheat, those are 9 aces." And I think that, like, Security Jake, how does Security Jake respond to this in this moment?
So I'm going to say, I could still, what is your intention here? Your intention is to sneak in when Jake is distracted?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could try to counter you, right? I could say, Hippodrome gamblers always lose after they win, and then try to spin that somehow into a counter. I'm looking at what I have available. I don't think anything that I have in play in the fiction, I certainly have +1 and +2 sentences available, but they're not things that I have set up in any sort of, meaningful way that would interfere here. So I think that you're going to succeed here. Security Jake, hand to ear, goes, we're gonna need backup on the Realis side, yacht casino, or yacht tables, and then does the thing. Attaches a mask to his face so that just in case things get weird, he can still breathe. And this signals something to you, which is one of the ways that they do security here is they'll just deoxygenate a place.
Just vent the room.
They'll just vent it's not even a room. They'll just stop venting in oxygen that will, like, settle on top of this walkway, this kind of, like, floating floor that's floating in space next to the giant space eel races, they'll just turn it off and they'll let their security guys be the ones who can move quickly when everyone else is, like, dealing with the lack of oxygen, or they'll probably decrease the amount of oxygen, So yeah, Jake gets distracted. You're able to move right in, and again, there's sort of a interior, almost like a little tower that you can take an escalator or an elevator up in, and then walk sort of those bridges that are like or not bridge. Those glass hallways in, like, aquariums where the fish are all around you.
Love those hallways.
It's that, but it's space and giant space eels being charioteered around a space hippodrome.
God, that's the fucking life.
So if you can, good gig if you can get it. I think it's as you're walking down that hallway, looking out the glass, that you see Carrie Cloud's ship, or orphan vessel, park outside. So you've got a good lead here, but she is on your tail a little bit. She doesn't see you. You don't make eye contact or anything, but, she'll probably go investigate the orphan vessel, which is all locked up. Obviously, we didn't say that explicitly, but this is not a game where I'm trying to get you, So, so yeah, you head into the casino. I'm guessing this is your plan.
Yeah. Do I have any lead on where the sort of word right cache is?
You believe it's towards the center of the casino. That is what you have been told. I think you found someone who claims to have been rejected from the word rights, or spent, apprentice years among the word rights, but was unable to complete the initiation rite. And so he only knows bits about what he doesn't have any power necessarily. He has like the very bare bones understanding of what their philosophies of the world are. He understands that they are greatly seen incredible things that no one believes, and he's the one who told you that there was because I think it was where he was hoping to be stationed, and this is part of why he did not. That's part of why he did not pass the initiation ritual. He was like, I really want to go to the one that's in the middle of the casino. And they were like, we can make and unmake reality. Maybe the people who go there are the ones who don't want to go to the casino.
I'm going to make my way to the bar.
Oh,
and not just the sort of regular, but this is a casino. There's all kinds of bars.
Oh yeah.
I think the bar that I am going to head towards is, it's called. Oh man, it's called Longfish because of course it is.
Of course it is.
And it is a bar that is built on the skeleton of the greatest longfish racer.
I love it.
It's like, what if we got the famous American racehorse called?
The one they made a movie about.
He's called like Sentinel or Signalman.
Seabiscuit?
Like yeah, Seabiscuit.
I don't think it's called Sentinel. It'd be cooler if it was called Sentinel. Seabiscuit's a fun name, but...
What if we got Seabiscuit and we turned him into a bar?
Yeah, great. Yeah, why not?
It's round. The skeleton is curled up
I love it.
Because longfish make an O in the moments before their death, which makes them very sacred to certain people in and around Realis.
Love it.
Sit down, order a drink, flip a coin onto the bar table. Yeah. Currency, I have to imagine, among the Thousand Moons is really weird, and I think that part of what's going on here is that this coin is gold.
Yes, that makes sense. It's accepted most places. It has its own kind of intrinsic value for its uses, It's going to get melted down and be used as wire in some piece of technology somewhere, or it'll continue to be exchanged as currency, because that's what currency is. Currency and, currency is definitely something you could play with in Realis. So it's a typed game or a written game. It's not really a vocal game. You can still do it. What are you're just buying yourself a drink? Are you looking for someone to talk to? Are you trying to be spotted? Or what is your play here?
I'd like to strike up rapport with the bartender. It's always a difficult thing to do at a fancy bar in a casino. But I would like to get a sense of, if there's been anything odd happening on the floor today. I'm needling, looking for an in, looking for a little weak spot or a bruise.
Well, the bartender serves your drink and says, here for the drinks, here for the drinks or the race, Captain.
Oh, mostly here for the race, but I'll take a drink while I watch.
Pours you the drink of the day, the special. And without any sort of prodding, it's just going to go back to doing what they're doing.
Well, that's not good enough for me. Okay, let's see. I haven't been here before.
You have been here before. We know you've been here before, in fact. Do you know how we know?
How?
Sentences are marked.
Oh, shit. Sentences are marked.
Sentences are marked. You've been here before. You know this place. I should have been more clear about that. That's on me. If we'd been playing this campaign, you would know, of course, you've been here before.
Yeah. Yes. All right. Let's see. I think I would like to get my token back.
Sure. Fun.
There are a couple of ways that I can do this. Yeah. I can use my impulse. I can act in accordance with my impulse, which in this case is responding to a noble problem with dishonorable means. My noble problem right now is I want to try and rob a casino. Not a noble problem.
You could also do the moon's impulse. And the moon's impulse in this case is make a bad bet.
Ooh.
Or there's other ways to get your token back. You could.
No, I'm just thinking about making a bad bet.
Yeah, you could realize a bond, which you don't have a bond ready to realize. You don't have a primed bond. Or you could invoke a tragic success, where one of your senses deliberately leads you deeper into trouble. You can't have a tragic success while you're already acting or counteracting. You can't be like, oh, I decided to do this thing. I have a goal in mind that would get me into trouble. And my intent would get me into trouble. It's its own separate thing. You can't counter someone trying to punch you and be like, well, I want this to get me deeper into trouble. So da-da-da-da-da. It has to be its own unique kind of action in the game. So you could do that now. You could say, ooh, I want a tragic success. I want to get drawn deeper into trouble by using one of these sentences.
I think I want to make a bad bet.
I bet you do.
I think I want to make a bad bet. Around the circular bar, like holograms, except they're not really holograms. They're sort of like, it's light projected through sort of like amber or something.
Ooh, fun.
It's these sort of like ripples in the amber on the top of the bar.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I guess the skeleton is like encased in amber.
That's fun.
And around the ripples, you can see the longfish doing the race.
Yeah.
The race is taking place around the bar as well. And I sort of attract the bartender's attention, just one way or another. I think I'm probably obnoxious about it, in that saying it loud enough that it's clear that I'm trying to attract the attention. And I draw attention to the longfish that is right at the back of the pack. He's sort of like limping insofar as an eel can limp. And I put like a God, what do I put down on the table to bet with?
Well, you have a couple things. You have some ephemera that you could bet with.
I do. I have this wooden compass that always shows me the way to safety.
Uh-huh.
I have the divisible diamond that always pays my way.
The divisible diamond, I imagine, is it's like, what if a diamond was a slice of butter and you could cut pads of it off?
Wow. That's sort of the exact opposite of a diamond.
It is. And yet...
I could bet Elio.
You could bet Elio. Oh, Elio would be so mad at you.
Unless this is a thing that.
Oh, right. Unless this is a classic scam.
Scoundrel
Scam. Yeah.
Scam.
Yeah, this is true.
Look at this beautiful owl.
Is this what you say to the bartender?
He serves drinks.
Yeah.
holding him in the palm of my hand. He's standing on the palm of my hand. I had a tip-off, one way or another. This is not direct dialogue, but, hearing from my brother who breeds longfish, that longfish at the back there, he swallowed, he swallowed like a long spear, and that spear is needling away at his insides and making his brain and his body move faster.
I see.
And it's just a matter of time.
This is a lie. You're lying, right? This is not true.
I'm making a bad bet.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And by the next lap, that longfish right at the front of the pack.
That's the bet you're making. All right, yeah, I think that's a bad bet. I do think we need to put up some sort of you have to bet something. You have to lose access to something while the race is going.
I could lose access to my owl.
Okay, yeah,
I suppose
the owl is being taken as the bet. I think the bartender says, "You're sure about this?"
I look into the eyes of Elio.
Yeah.
Just sort of like a slow, what appears to be a solemn nod to the bartender is actually like a, "You're with me, Elio."
Yeah, well, I think the bartender goes, sorry, I was asking the owl. And Elio goes, "Ooh." And then hops off your shoulder, lands on the bar, and then the bartender, with the speed that's a little strange, produces a little cage. As if oh right, yeah, this is taking on living biological pets is a common type of bet taking here in the Hippodrome Casino. And just, Elio hops in, flexes his little wings, and the bartender places the cage on a little platform that begins to, it's almost like a dumbwaiter. It begins to descend deeper into the casino's core,
Oh my god, to some awful room full of owls.
Yeah, and then produces a little from a printer, a little like a coat check ticket for if you win the bet, you can go down and get 2 owls, or you can go get your owl back plus your owl's worth of the winnings.
If I'd known I was betting against another owl owner, I could have been much more specific about what I was doing.
Yeah, well, you're betting against the house, and the house happens to move in many currencies, including owls.
Can't spell house without owls.
You cannot. Yeah, classic.
God, the longfish.
Take your
pouring
token
around.
back.
Yeah, I have my token back, but I almost certainly lose the bet.
We'll see. Yeah.
How do you want to arbitrate whether or not the
race is still going. We're on lap 22.
It wasn't. It was around the next lap.
Oh, it was on the next lap. I thought it was around the whole race. I didn't realize that you were just doing.
No.
I see. Yeah, you're doing a little prop bet.
This is sort of like roll doll.
Yeah.
I bet I can light the lighter 100 times or whatever.
Yeah,
that's 5 times in the story.
I think there's a couple of ways here. Hippodrome jockeys always ride their longfish and serpentine curves. I think the moon can try to use that sentence to win the race outside of you being able to do. You know what I mean? That's going to happen against and its intent is going to be that the longfish in the back stays in the back. Or we could do something fun that we do on this game or on this show a lot and just make something up. We could roll some dice real quick. This is a diceless game, but what if we just rolled
we're here to demo Realis and we're let's roll some.
What if we
let's
roll
some
how
dice.
many longfish are there? You said
48.
48? All right, roll it. Let's I'm going to go over to a virtual dice roller here. I'm going to screen share it with you real quick.
Okay, sounds good.
Let me grab this dice roller. Boom. I'll come over here. There's 48 sides on one die here, non-conventional dice roller. You're going to get a 48 to win.
Okay, sounds
Bad
good.
bet. It's kind of exciting. I gotta hit the stop button. Tell me when to hit stop.
Stop.
26. Bad bet. Elio, the owl, has disappeared into the depths of this casino. You get your token back.
I do get my token back. There's this incredible Hippodrome track sentence, which is Hippodrome gamblers always lose after they win.
Yeah, unfortunately, they do not
Unfortunately,
win after
it's not they always win after they lose.
In a sense,
this is not how the house works.
You did just sort of do this, though. You won by getting inside, and now you've lost. So
I have. The house always wins, even against the wonderful Amaretto scandal.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. All
and
right.
in a sense, you've also proved the sentence, where'd it go? The Hippodrome Casino always tempts those in search of something.
It does. Elio and I are tight. This is but a mere separation. This is not a goodbye. You know?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Sour. Amaretto doesn't know that they've got their token back. I know that.
Right. Correct.
Rises from the chair, drinks my horrible drink.
I thought you were describing your drink as sour when you first said the word sour, too, so...
I am sour and my drink is sour. This is because it's a drink whose taste shifts to match your mood.
Oh, wonderful. Perfect.
The drunker you get, the less and less it tastes, until eventually it tastes of nothing at all.
Wonderful.
And it has olives in or something. Drown it, chew on the olives, sour.
Mm-hmm.
You do not leave a tip. What kind of scoundrel leaves a tip, other than in the good bars? Stalking back towards the center of the casino, kind of like following the crush of the crowd.
Yeah. I think it's at this point that she is here on the floor. Carrie Cloud, the Hawkshaw who's been following you, the detective from the Kiliad Consortium, is again now with the intention of cornering you. Going to try to use the sentence, I always sniff out enemies who've hurt the consortium. She is kind of looking across the crowd of people at various gambling games and table games and slot machines and similar devices, scanning the crowd with her own eyes for you. What do you do?
The weight of Elio's absence on my shoulder, his horrible little owl claws or whatever not being there. There's like 3 little pin marks where each of his feet stood on my beautiful blazer. I reach into the pocket of my blazer for my wooden compass, which always shows me the way to safety. Mm-hmm. I'm going to try and counter with this piece of ephemera.
And at this point that it will succeed because Carrie Cloud's, you have Carrie Cloud sentences already. This is not like a secret sentence. You've run across it before. When you first met Carrie, it was, I always sniff out enemies of the consortium. It's now become who've hurt the consortium. So not just people they've determined are enemies, but people who've actually done damage. That's going to fail against you and this thing. I think that it hovers in the sky, or not the sky, but the air in front of you, like it does, and it draws a line. It draws the circle, the type of circle it did before, but then it starts hovering in front of you and like drawing like a video game waypoint laser light to follow. It's activated something here. It's resonating with something here. It's bringing you to safety, but it might be bringing you to more than just safety.
Moving through the crowd quickly. Those great moments towards the end of Ocean's 11 where even among the casino crowds, Danny and co are like moving with haste and urgency and nervousness following this thing. Looking back over my shoulder towards Carrie.
Who has lost you here, has not found you here. And in fact, you've countered the sentence, importantly. Carrie does not, for the rest of the scene, have access to, I always sniff out enemies who've hurt the consortium. In fact, the way that the book explains countering, it's not just that she doesn't have the sentence. It in fact is more like the sentence has been kind of rewritten to be in the negative, if that makes sense. I'm trying to find the exact way that it's described. Here we go. It is now, I cannot, instead of I always. I cannot sniff out the enemies who've hurt the consortium for the rest of this scene. Now, if the scene ends, if you go do, let's say we did 40 minutes of a different scene in the heart of this casino, and or we get deep into you start playing cards with somebody, that's probably a new scene. But for the rest of this scene, which is you kind of traversing, trying to find the hidden archive, she will not be able to use that sentence, which is pretty useful, I think. I think we get a sort of big, like a diagram of the casino. We get a sort of like, it's a big orb around which the longfish are racing, and there's the kind of yacht, the space yacht, or the space orphan vessel yacht, mooring. But we get the kind of like, what do you call it? Like a bisected diagram. You know what I mean? The sort of like Steve Zissou style submarine cutaway. And we get both you moving through almost like Family Circus with the line that you're following. And then also we can see Elio moving through the tubes and the tunnels and the different little mini elevators until he's going to land at the owl, the secret owl vault at the heart of or towards the middle of the station. And we see something else. There's a point at which the compass guides you down a hallway, and then it stops and reverses and starts leading you a different direction. And you're like, what the hell is going on? Huh. I'm revealing you a new sentence, a new moon sentence here. The moon sentence is, the hippodrome's penetralia always shifts in place. There is, at the center of the hippodrome, a wooden room that is on a sort of track inside of a big hollow. And in that hollow, is this archive that you're looking for, is this room that's being, it's almost like on a simple roller coaster track or a minecart track, the whole big library is. And it is moving around. And so the compass is kind of, I'll tell you outright, the compass is made of the same wood as the penetralia is, this kind of secreted away archive from the word rights. And all of the time that it has led you, quote unquote, to safety, it's because the thing that it thinks is safe is this room. And it's been showing you how to get to this room the whole time you've been using it. Which is to say, like, its sentence has not actually ever been get you to safety. It's always been get you to the secret room. And that happens to be more safe than the situations you're in all the time. So you've experienced it as always shows you the way to safety, which, by the way, is crossed out now. You've used it for 3 times. You still have it. It's still guiding you, but it's not going to solve any crises or any conflicts for you at this point.
Yes.
You now kind of get the sense. You're walking up and down elevators, your escalators. You can, in a video game when you can tell that something important is like on the other side of a mountain, or yes. I'll just go around the mountain, and you're like, wait, it turned into a lake. Like, I can't. Now there's a lake here. Now there's a town that the walls are closed. The gate is closed on the town, so I can't pass through the town to get around. How do I get in there? Which is at this point the thing that is a sentence that's. I guess it's not being used on you. But the thing that makes this uncertain is the hippodrome's penetralia always shifts in place. That creates an uncertainty that you'll have to beat in order to find this room. But it's not being used on you. It's not, I guess I could use it on you, and I could say something like, the intention of this moon is to befuddle you, which would force you. In fact, maybe that's what's happening. The moon itself, the hippodrome, track, and casino is trying to befuddle you using the hippodrome's penetralia always shifts in place.
Right. I'm trying to look at my sentences in terms of what could protect or deflect me from being befuddled.
Sure.
Because your intent is to befuddle.
That is my intent.
That is the thing I am trying to counter with.
Yeah. There's lots of breadth here in the sense that you don't need a sentence that says, I am never befuddled, right? You could find a guide. You could get someone to give you a map that updates itself. You have a lot of authority here in the sense that you are a co-author, right? The goal of this thing is, again, there's like a secret room in the middle of this whole complex that's moving around. If you had some way of tracking that, it wouldn't succeed. If you could stop it in place somehow, it wouldn't befuddle you anymore. The sentence would get countered. Or maybe you fail this and you're befuddled, but you find some other way to get there still.
Yeah. Could you be specific about what you mean by alibi? Are you meaning that in the sort of like classical crime sense of like, I wasn't there,
no,
that's not me?
It's I guess, yeah, the word alibi is maybe wrong. Well, you always have an excuse. You always have a reason to be somewhere. You always have an alibi for what you're doing at the time. I guess it could also be the classical crime sense, though. That wasn't me. I was somewhere else at the time. But it could also be, oh, no, I'm not the guy you're looking for right now,
Right. Yeah. Well, then I'm going to try and counter it with the sentence, when I'm somewhere I've been before, I always have an alibi. To try and look for someone who can guide me through this area. I should be here.
Yeah.
You do not need to worry about me. I'm going to effect a role to get me through this.
What's that look like?
I think that it is a subtle shift of Amaretto's posture. And then just like a long, shuddering sigh, and a sort of like pained cry of like, I'm lost, come to my aid.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that this works. I think that between the posture shift and the fact that you have the compass, it thinks you're a word right.
Huh.
It recognizes you not only as not a threat, but explicitly someone who is supposed to be here, So I'm going to counter that sentence. The Hippodromus penetralia always shifts in place. Importantly, it's no longer shifting in place, right? Let's keep that in mind as we continue. Crossing it out for the remainder of the scene as you're trying to get towards it. I'm marking it. And yeah, the compass at this point can lead you the rest of the way there. You're going down hallways. We don't have to be super close in on this. Security, it remains distracted with what's going on, so you're not going to run into them. And you're able to like cut down strange corridors and, take some stairs that suddenly go from being made from a synthetic material to a kind of a iron or steel, then to wood. And suddenly you are floating in a sort of the empty center of this place. It's as if you realized, oh, this thing used to be some sort of asteroid, and in the middle of the asteroid was this track on which this whole big kind of, I say big, it's not that big, a sort of study, maybe bigger than a study, smaller than a library, it's on these tracks, and it's come to a halt at one of the many sort of places that it can come to a halt and people can get on or off. It's almost like a room that is a tram that takes you around the interior of the casino. And it's the whole thing is made from wood, like an old roller coaster. And it has come to a sort of halt. And it's quiet here. I don't know what you expected, but there's no one is standing guard. No one is, holding up a torch or a flashlight looking for you. It's almost like looking at a house in the valley. You're climbing down these stairs towards it, and it's just this big black gulf, this dark room, except for this wooden structure that's being lit by kind of floating, kind of orbs of light that are kind of hovering around it or being kind of projected by it. And it's sort of like a very craftsman-like structure, you can feel the hand of the craftsman who designed this place, in some ways, this is the classic, the word writes are sort of like monks and not just magicians, and they often have a sort of project on top of whatever their spiritual pursuit is. And in this case, it was the house itself. It was the archive itself. So yeah, you're here. What do you do?
down the steps into it, there's like a desk and a chair. It's like a study,
It's like
right?
a study. Yeah, and it's bigger than a study, smaller than like your town's library,
Yeah.
It's like a school library. Does that make sense? It's like one or two floors, and not like a university's library, but like a high school library. Maybe it's a floor, maybe it's 2 floors. It's about that many. It has that many shelves, but it's not a vast library.
This is tough, because the thing that I was hoping for, that Amaretto was hoping for, was either 1 or 2 big books, that I could take with me, or like a crystal or something. I think that they had sort of been picturing this moment of discovery as a sort of like rapturous sort of visitation of knowledge, that it would kind of come pouring into them. Yeah. And so to be faced with, must be like 500 books or something, it's difficult. And I think that the first thing that they do, I enter and I just, flip open a page that's open on a reader or something to just glance at it.
It is not a word write book at all. It's talking about it's talking about some like basic, maybe not some, but you flip to a random page. It's talking to like advanced alchemical science. And then you flip to a different book, a different page, and it's talking about how to draw on the power in blood and flesh. And you look at a different book, and it's talking about how to summon the magnetic forces of the moon, or how to put moons in alignment in order to predict the future. This is not an archive of word write power. This is an archive the word writes kept of other people's power, which is very useful, but is not access to the greatest, transcendental, spiritual sorceries. It's everything. The word rights were above it all, and it's not access to their power, but it is the sort of place that could teach you how to do. I mean, you have to teach yourself a lot, but
How is this room mounted into the asteroid?
It is on tracks. It is on, rails. It's just in the center of the asteroid. There is no, pull out of here.
Is there a sense of how it was brought in
here?
They
built it.
Do you think it was built inside?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it wasn't like...
They, cored this asteroid and then built this here. You do notice that there is, it does look like maybe there had been some other structures on the rails at some point. Maybe you find a map of the facility, and there's this, and then there was supposed to be another, like the house, the not the barracks, but like the dorms or whatever. More word rights certainly lived here once, and this seems to be the only structure that remains, but you're not sure why.
Huh.
I could tell you why, but I want to make sure you have a little, you have the initiative, so to speak.
Yeah, the patient reading time in the thing. I mean, I know that Carrie is hunting me.
You've done a pretty good job of losing her, and the rest of the sentence of hers that you know are really for once she's found you,
Yeah. I think that I would like to... Man, it's so hard. All right, I'm going to take a couple of books. I'm going to take, a book on... I'm looking for books about, binding and conjuration or something. I'm looking at my dream here, which, again, is I will learn enough to fix what I broke. So I, Jack, don't know what we're looking for there, but I think also probably Amaretto is going for a real broad spectrum, things to bind things together, things to sort of conjure or build things out of nothing, things to does time travel exist?
Right,
Probably.
Right, who
things
knows?
To conjure something backwards or forwards in time. Yeah. I know that these aren't word write books, so probably don't have the kinds of powers that the word writes did. But if I was someone who did know how to work through time travel or whatever, I would also be collecting early historical accounts of time travel or something,
You said you're spending your dream on this.
No,
you're being influenced by what that dream is.
I'm being influenced by my dream. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you're able to start picking through these things, but it's hard. Like this isn't what you're not an expert at this. You're a smuggler. You know, this is the damn trick, right? If Han Solo wants to become Gandalf, Han Solo has to become Gandalf, right? And you're really at the Han Solo part of your career. With enough time here, you might be able to change that. This is a game about change, after all. But you're not alone. Jack, can you counter the sentence, I always remain undetected until it's too late?
Now, here's something that happens quite a lot in Realis, which is that as players, you start trying to figure out a GM's sentence. You'll notice that Austin didn't say, can you counter a reality X sentence or whatever, but he did read it.
I did. I'll say it again.
He can say it. We can ask him to say it again. I think that's in the book, right? That like players can always ask for clarification on the sentences being used.
And I will read it again for you. It is, I always remain undetected until it is too late.
So this to me sounds like a Reality 1 sentence. I always remain undetected until it is too late.
It could be. Yeah, it could be.
I'm going to use my sentence when my back is against the wall. I always unveil a single-use concealed weapon. My back is against the wall because here I am in this underground room. You just said that I'm not Gandalf. Yeah. I'm a scoundrel. I am deep in a casino. There is someone above me who is possibly hunting me, and I can get a sense in the way that sort of people acting in Realis can that someone is about to act against me.
Yeah, and they were going to. This is going to succeed. Their intention was to kill you and devour you. This is a wood eater, specialists in skulking and sieging who work to weaken enemy infrastructure. By the time a unit is spotted, it is often too late. It is a type of humanoid bug. It is a sort of humanoid termite. It leaps, or actually it crawls slowly. You catch it out of the corner of your vision, kind of crawling in the shadows of this kind of library. And it's like getting ready to leap on you, and knock you out. What's happened to the rest of the structures that were here? The wood eaters ate them. But it seems like they were maybe abandoned here, or they're not part of the Empest fleet is not here. You know, you've run into the Empest before. They're a sort of...
Oh, this is one of the Empest?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Huh.
You've never run into one like this before. The Empest are a sort of... what if the Roman Empire went to space and became so deeply corrupt that they became space bugs? Big, chitinous, gooey space bugs. They still have a lot of the structure of empire. They're a swarm. They're locustal. They come in waves and seasons. They have a sort of insect efficiency, but also sometimes they leave groups behind because they move on. And a group like this was once a vast unit. And I'll tell you right now, you're lucky that they are not all here because the wood eaters have a +3 sentence. When I work with my unit, I always devour anything not made of stone or metal. So pretty powerful if they're working together. But this seems to be the lone one left. Whatever situation, you don't know what happened here, right? Maybe the Word Rights fought them off. Maybe they were only able to destroy parts of it before the Kiliad Consortium, the Free Moon's Assembly took over this place and started building a casino on top of it. You're not sure, but you do know that there is a creature leaping at you from the shadows. What is your one-use concealed weapon?
My one-use concealed weapon is a gun that I found in the wreckage of a town that had been destroyed by a volcano. It's like I found it in like Pompeii, a guy was I found the sort of the shape of a man holding the gun in his hands, pointing it up towards the volcano, either in threat or in action. I don't know what this gun does until I fire it, or rather, Amaretto doesn't, but I know what it does. This single-use gun swaps the object with the object that is sort of like directly behind it with a massive amount of concussive force.
Oh, interesting.
So what this essentially does is it like drives the wood eater backwards through the like stone body of the asteroid, and at the same time like launches stone towards me that I like dive out of the way of.
Incredible. And yeah, I think that I think we could keep playing here. Notably, that sentence is is primed. When my back is against the wall, I always unveil a single-use concealed weapon. You could realize it. You could make it a tier 3 sentence if you wanted to.
I was thinking of doing that, but I could see that I was going to beat your sentence. But for the purposes of this, I could realize it to something like, when my back is against the wall, I always unveil a single-use silenced concealed.
You could not do that.
Why not?
Because at that point, what you're doing is making it. I mean, I guess you could. This is a thing that we could work back and forth on. I don't know that silenced is a qualification of the sort that realization talks about specifically. If you go read the section on realization, one of the things that is super important is the only rule about realization is that you must always follow that the sentence must be restricted, not expanded. I guess this isn't an expansion, and the specific thing the example I use is I always know how to enter or use the drift could become I always know how to enter or leave the drift when piloting my orphan vessel, but never I always know how to enter or leave the drift and other mysterious realms. You're right that silenced is a restriction, but I'm cautious about it because it's also an ability. But I guess you're right that it is. If what you want is a rocket launcher, you can't have a rocket launcher anymore. But what I don't want you doing is saying,
cause a distraction.
But the thing that's important is you can't now just say, "Well, I have a silenced rocket launcher." Do you see what I mean?
Oh.
You don't see the problem with this, Jack, because you're Jack de Quidt. And you will always read the sentence tightly. But there are players for whom, and so I think that's just an important thing to say. This is a good example of like the negotiation around this. It should always feel more restrictive. I'm happy for you can go with this here, but
I always unveil a single-use unwieldy one.
Perfect. 100% perfect. Yes.
And this would now become a reality 3 sentence. So here's the thing. All right, I've gotten myself an unwieldy weapon, but I've also gotten myself a reality 3 sentence.
Yes, which can beat anything in the game that isn't a dream.
It's true. It's true.
There might be a couple of +4 sentences in the full book. I don't remember if there's one in the ash can. So
I think I've seen a +4
There's ephemera that are +4. Very, very rare. The Master Sword might be +4. The One Ring is +4. Ephemera can also be things like alliances or treaties or beliefs. And so what's a famous like? Oh, when Aragorn. I don't know why I'm going to Lord of the Rings so much. When in the movies,
I'm going to Lord of the Rings a lot today.
I know, it's weird. Well, I think that this is a what's a +4 sentence? Let's go to Berserk instead. +4 ephemera is the Behelit from Berserk, the relic that leads to the eclipse that fundamentally transforms the world. Is a +4 ephemera. These sorts of things, these sorts of setting shaking powers are +4s, and dreams can beat even those. So yeah, I think you're able to stay here. And I think that this is sort of, rare case. We're going to leave you learning enough to fix what you broke, whatever that was, here among the books of different types of magic. We don't need to keep playing this character, even though I like them a lot. Maybe we'll come back to them one day.
Owl Vault.
Yeah.
Owl Vault.
My read is that you're going to stay here, so you're going to have time to go get your owl.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm just thinking what's going on in the Owl Vault. Elio presumably has their own sentences.
Well, you know what?
In the shape of the world.
Actually, Elio does. In this book, there are, one of the NPC classes I made sure existed was in this book was for birds. The prey bird is in here as an NPC. Let's see what the prey bird has. The prey bird has, I always fly from danger, I always flock towards food, and from the air, I always see more than others. I always fly from danger, I think, is going to serve Elio just fine. Maybe it'll take a little while,
Well, it's going to take me a little while to learn how to,
summon the portal that will get Elio free.
Yes. Yeah. One of the first spells that Gandalf learned, of course, save owl.
Well, I think one of the first spells Gandalf learned was save bird, which is why those birds helped him out in the end.
Oh yeah,
so, yeah.
Is there anything else we want to hit here before we go?
I don't think so. I think this is a good, there's an end of session in Realis that I think is actually really important. I was just talking to Ali about how to make sure that those, she was just talking to me about how do we make sure those are in there because they're so important. If you work towards achieving your dream, you get to mark a dot next to one means of your choice. Obviously, you could do that to an ephemera, but that's like wasting an ephemera. But it does mean that, for instance, if you wanted to mark the Elio the Owl sentence, even though you didn't use that bond, you could mark that sentence. You
absolutely used my dream.
Or you worked towards your dream, rather.
Yeah, yes, did not use my sentence.
So that means you could mark any sentence you wanted. So you could mark when I'm somewhere I've always been before. I always have an alibi if you wanted to, right, to prime it for realization. Then you choose a means that shaped how you played your character, but which you didn't mark during play, because it didn't fail, for instance, and you get to mark it. Another way to make sure that progression is just flowing through the game. So, for instance, you didn't fail when my back is against the wall. I always unveil a single-use unwieldy weapon, but you could prime it, you could mark it here. You didn't use when fleeing from the authorities, etc. You could mark that one. You didn't mark when I'm somewhere I haven't been before. I always have an alibi because you succeeded, but you could mark that again because it did kind of guide how you played. You write down the current status of your token. If you were playing at a table, we'd want to make sure that on the sheet it said, hey, I have a token. And then you review your means to make sure that they are all properly marked. A thing that we didn't do here, but is important to think about, is at any point you could have honed one of your sentences for the session.
Yes.
Right? So you could have said, I always keep my cargo concealed from technological devices. You could have said, like, that didn't come up specifically, but like when I have the time to prepare, or when I can distract someone with some charm, I always keep or when I always keep my living cargo concealed from technological devices, or something like that. Something more specific than just cargo, which is really broad. And then so you'd unhone it, you'd write it back the way it was originally, or you'd erase whatever you've added. You'd make sure that things like ephemera have been marked properly, that dreams are crossed out if you use them, etc. Importantly, a dream is a once per campaign use. If you had used your dream, you would have to cross it out here because it would be gone. And then you review bonds and dreams and band sentences to make sure that they're all good. And if it's time to realize one of those, you go for it. You realize it, or you take notes on how you want to realize it before you start playing next time. But I think that's kind of the big thing. That's kind of it. That's Realis in an hour and a half, or an hour and 40 minutes. I don't know how long the edit's going to be.
There's a lot more in it. It's the Great Plateau.
It's the Great Plateau. Yeah, as we talk about a lot. Zelda and Lord of the Rings today, big, even though those aren't like key influences on this game.
Zelda for Perpetua.
Zelda for Perpetua, hugely.
Oh, do we want to talk about Perpetua briefly?
Let's pitch Perpetua.
For people who might be hearing Realis for the first
Realis, this will run in this main feed for, I believe, the next 4 weeks, the next month or so. Ali sent us a doc over yesterday about how the episodes are being cut up, but I don't remember what it said. The first few episodes are the first kind of arc of the game. This intro episode, then an episode of character building for a group of players. Then the first, it looks like it's actually going to be the first. This next 6 weeks is going to be Realis, is what it looks like, or maybe the next 5 weeks. This will come out with character building probably, and then there will be another 4 episodes after that, and those will all come out in the main feed, and then end on the Patreon feed probably also, and then the remainder of the season will be all on the Patreon feed over the next year or so probably. We have a lot of that recorded already. Meanwhile, in the main feed, we'll be launching a new game. Fabula Ultima is a kind of JRPG-inspired tabletop role-playing game by Emanuel Galetto that is fantastic. We've recorded a handful of sessions for that, along with a world-building game. We used the game Cartograph to map out part of the world. That game was a joy to play. I think of that almost more like a Road to, in some ways, Perpetua. I might even market that in the feed as the Road to Perpetua. And I don't want to say too much about what the premise of Perpetua is, other than classic JRPG meets kind of Dreamcast aesthetics as the kind of tonal aesthetic pitch. But beyond that, I'm trying to keep some stuff close to the vest here. You have something you want to... It's been a blast, though. Jack has a great character. Everyone's characters are incredible. It's been a joy so far. And that'll start running again in about a month, a little over a month, in the main feed. And that'll be the primary campaign for Friends at the Table in 2025. And probably beyond, but no promises.
Okay.
We did it.
I think
Jack, where can people go find the music to Realis and the rest of Friends at the Table?
You can find the music to Realis at notquitereal.bandcamp.com, where you can see the amazing cover art by Grime, who's on Instagram at Oddesque. It's so cool. The music has been like... I was describing it to my partner yesterday in terms that she did not understand, but you will, as like trying to open the big gate to kill your Zoldic's house. Just pushing against this gate for months and months and months, and hopefully when you hear the theme, you will understand why it took so long. But the Realis soundtrack is really odd and really fun.
It's so good. Speaking of Kill with Zoldyck, you should also listen to Media Club Plus, where Jack, you, along with Dre, Sylvie, and Keith, have been watching and commenting on Hunter x Hunter, the 2011 anime adaptation of Togashi's manga, which was not a direct influence on this game, but it was one after I watched it. I made the core of this game before learning what, for instance, a Nen condition was, and my friend Wes at the time was like, dude, you don't understand, but you made a thing from Hunter x Hunter that you have not seen yet. And boy, did I. I did not realize that I was doing it. When I am fighting the Phantom Troop, I always...
Yeah, it's true. You don't want to be fighting the Phantom Troop. Only a good time with the Phantom Troop. Although, unfortunately, the Phantom Troop gets to decide when you're fighting them most of the time.
That is true. And, a great example of the way a sentence in this game can work, right? Was like... Kurapika has some stuff that's like, wow, how could anyone ever beat this? And the answer is, don't be part of the Phantom Troop. And then they can't use it against you at all. So
if you're listening to this and thinking, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, what is Hunter x Hunter? A, you should listen to Media Club Plus, and B, you should just watch Hunter x Hunter. It's great.
So good. All right. I think that's going to do it for us. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, you can check this out by going to the calcutech.itch.io, or I should say this clearly, you can go to the itch page for Possible Worlds games, which I believe is, I'll double check it here. I'm going to make sure I get it right. Possible-worlds-games.itch.io. And it'll be there in a new kind of section at the top of the page. Go ahead and click that and check it out.
Of course, Austin's been making Unreal for small shooter maps for the last 8 years. You can check those all out at his itch page.
I wish that's the life that I was leading, but unfortunately, the only other thing on there is a Century Twine game I made about 14 years ago or something, which is wild to think about.
All right, have a good night, everybody.
Bye. Hey everybody, 700 loops. That's the take tonight. We got beef stew on the fire. We got a beautiful song coming from my daughter Crystal. And we got another day of work tomorrow. So everybody dig in, drink up, get some rest. And a little special announcement. I had a meeting today with the Lord of the Old Citadel, Lord Bane, Lord Theragon Bane himself, and he has invited us to do a little internal show tomorrow night.
Hey, are you a jerk?
What'd you call me?
I didn't call you anything.
It was rhetorical. It was a question, so it doesn't count.
No, I was just asking. Are you a jerk?
Hey, how about you come over here and see if I'm a jerk? You simply do your readings here at this table. There's no device, a telescope, or an observatory. There's no orrery for you to consult.
No, the connections made are very organic.
You're cheating. I missed that shot. I feel it. I missed that shot. Guards.
This circus is under my protection.
Cheaters and ghosts! I will have the Lord know about this, and you'll all be sent away. I think they have something real special in the vault here. Real special. We could make it big.
Big.
We could get our own ship. We could... you and me and well, we don't need this place anymore. We could make it big. It's called the Skipping Stone. Big gem, big as my face.
Big as your face?
And it's magical. And it's in this book. Look, it says here it was lost on Olid. And this is Olid.